There is a 14-minute episode in Season 4 of Adventure Time where a cookie tries to jump off a cliff. The show frames it exactly the way you think it does. The other characters rush to stop him. The music drops. The camera holds on the ledge. Princess Cookie, Season 4, Episode 13. A children's cartoon on Cartoon Network airing at 7 in the evening showed a character choosing to end his own life because the world refused to let him be who he wanted to be. The show did not play it for laughs. It did not cut away to a joke. It held the moment, let it breathe, and then moved on as if it trusted its audience to understand what had just happened. That was not the saddest thing Adventure Time ever did. It was not even close. Underneath the bright colors and the silly voices and the stretchy dog and the boy with the funny hat, there is a show that kept returning to the same question over and over across 10 seasons and 283 episodes. The question was never spoken aloud, but if you watched long enough, you heard it in every silence, in every held note, in every scene where a character stared at something that used to be something else. The question was this: what do you do when the thing you love the most is the thing you are losing? That is what this video is about. Not the funny moments, not the lore you already know. Just the sadness. Just the moments where Adventure Time stopped being a cartoon and became something that sat with you long after the screen went dark. There are more of these moments than you might remember, and they are connected in ways the show never quite explained. If you enjoy long-form essays like this one, subscribing helps the channel keep making them. It is free, and it takes a few seconds. Now, let us begin with a man named Simon Petrikov, and the day he found something he should have left buried. Before Simon Petrikov became the Ice King, he was an antiquarian. That is an important word because it tells you something about who he was before the crown took him. An antiquarian is someone who studies old things, someone who believes that the past matters, that objects carry memory, that history is worth preserving. Simon Petrikov spent his life surrounded by artifacts that other people had forgotten, and he treated each one as if it still mattered. He cataloged them, he photographed them, he wrote papers about them. He was, by every account the show gives us, a gentle and careful man who loved knowledge and loved the woman he was engaged to, a woman named Betty Graf. On a trip to Scandinavia, Simon purchased the crown from an old dock worker. The show never tells us exactly when this happened, but the timeline places it somewhere in the early 21st century, before the Mushroom War, before the world ended, before everything that came after. He brought the crown home. He put it on his head, the way you might try on a hat at a market, not thinking much of it. And then everything changed. The first time he wore the crown, he blacked out. When he came to, Betty was looking at him differently. He had said things he did not remember saying. He had done things he did not remember doing. The crown had spoken through him, and whatever it said was enough to make the woman he loved look at him with fear. Betty left. The show tells us this in pieces, spread across multiple seasons, and every piece makes it worse. She did not leave because she stopped loving him. She left because the man she loved was disappearing, and she could not watch it happen. This is the first layer of sadness in Adventure Time, and it is the one the show returns to more than any other. Simon Petrikov did not choose to become the Ice King. He did not make a deal with a demon. He did not seek power or revenge or immortality. He found an object, and the object consumed him. Slowly, over years, one memory at a time. The show is remarkably specific about how this works. Every time Simon puts on the crown, he loses a little more of himself. Not in a dramatic all-at-once collapse, but in the way that real loss actually happens. A name he used to know becomes harder to recall. A face he used to love becomes blurry. A feeling he used to have becomes something he can almost reach but never quite touch. The crown does not destroy Simon Petrikov. It erodes him. It takes him the way water takes stone, so gradually that by the time anyone notices, the shape is already gone. Season 4, Episode 25, October 15th, 2012. I remember you. If you have seen this episode, you already know. If you have not, what follows might be the saddest 11 minutes of television ever produced for a children's network. The Ice King shows up at Marceline's house. He wants help writing a song. That is the surface plot. A silly old man who kidnaps princesses wants to write a catchy tune. Marceline lets him in, the way she always does, with a mix of annoyance and something deeper that she does not want to name. They start working on the song, and then the Ice King pulls out a stack of papers, notes, letters, scribbles, things he found in his robe and does not remember writing. Marceline looks at the papers and her expression changes, because she recognizes them. They are notes that Simon Petrikov wrote to her years ago when she was a child, when the world was ending. when he was still himself enough to know what was happening to him. One of the notes is a message he wrote before the crown took the last of his clarity. It says, in essence, that he is sorry, that he knows he is going away, that he wants her to know that the person he is becoming is not the person he was, that he loves her even if he will not remember loving her. Marceline reads these notes while the Ice King sits across from her, humming to himself, completely unaware of what he is holding. He does not know that these are his own words. He does not know that the girl sitting across from him is the same child he once protected. He does not know that she has been carrying the weight of his loss for centuries, watching him wander through the world as a broken version of the man who saved her life. The episode ends with both of them singing a song together. The lyrics are drawn from Simon's old notes. The Ice King thinks they have written something fun. Marceline is barely holding herself together. The camera holds on her face in the final seconds, and you can see it. You can see 1,000 years of grief compressed into the expression of someone who has learned to smile through it because the alternative is too heavy to carry. What makes this episode work is not the reveal, it is the gap. The distance between what the Ice King understands and what Marceline understands. He is sitting right next to the person who misses him most in the world, and he does not know it. She is sitting right next to the person she lost, and she cannot get him back. They are in the same room, sharing the same song, and they might as well be on different planets. That is not a cartoon premise. That is the lived experience of anyone who has watched someone they love disappear into dementia or addiction or illness or any of the 1,000 things that take a person away while their body stays behind. The show returned to this well again and again because the well never ran dry. Season 5, Episode 14, Simon and Marceline, aired on March 25th, 2013. This one goes back further. 47-year-old Simon and 7-year-old Marceline, walking through the ruins of human civilization after the Mushroom War. The world is broken. The sky is wrong. The buildings are hollow, and Simon is trying to keep a little girl alive in a landscape that wants to kill everything. He is already wearing the crown sometimes. He knows what it does to him. He knows that every time he puts it on, he comes back a little less. But the monsters come, and the girl is small, and the only weapon he has is the thing that is destroying him. So he puts it on. Every time, he puts it on and saves her life and loses another piece of himself. And then he takes it off and tries to pretend that he is fine, that the gaps in his memory are nothing, that the strange thoughts creeping into his mind are just stress. There is a scene in this episode where Simon is singing to Marceline. He is singing the Cheers theme song, not because it is meaningful to the moment, but because it is the only song he can still remember. The crown has taken so much from him that the theme song from a sitcom is the most complex piece of his former life he can still access. And he sings it to this little girl in the ruins of the world, trying to make her laugh, trying to be the person she needs him to be, while the thing on his head quietly eats everything that makes him that person. This episode was nominated for a Primetime Emmy at the 65th Primetime Emmy Awards. That fact alone tells you something. A cartoon about a boy and his dog in a candy kingdom was being recognized by the same institution that honored Breaking Bad and Mad Men, because the story of a man losing his mind while trying to protect a child was told with a precision and a tenderness that most prestige dramas never achieve. The specificity of the Simon and Marceline episodes is what makes them work as well as they do. The show does not generalize about loss, it does not speak in abstractions. It gives you the Cheers theme song. It gives you a stuffed animal named Hambo. It gives you a stack of handwritten notes in a bathrobe pocket. It gives you the exact, irreducible details of two specific lives intersecting at the end of the world. And it trusts those details to carry the emotional weight without the help of grand statements or sweeping orchestral scores. This is a lesson in storytelling that Adventure Time teaches by example. The universal is not reached through abstraction. The universal is reached through specificity. The more precisely you describe one person's grief, the more people recognize their own. Every viewer who has watched I Remember You and felt something break inside them did not feel that way because they have a personal connection to cryogenic crowns or post-apocalyptic vampires. They felt that way because they have watched someone they love not recognize them, because they have held a letter from someone who is gone and felt the handwriting mean more than the words, because they have sat in a room with a person who used to know them and felt the distance between knowing and not knowing stretch across the space like a canyon with no bridge. The Simon and Marceline story also illustrates something about the nature of sacrifice that the show explores from multiple angles throughout its run. Simon's sacrifice is involuntary, but continuous. He does not make one grand decision to save Marceline. He makes 1,000 small decisions, each one costing him a fragment of himself, each one so minor in isolation that it barely registers as sacrifice. He puts it on the crown to fight off a monster. He puts it on to warm them both when the cold gets dangerous. He puts it on because the alternative is letting the girl die, and he cannot let the girl die, even if saving her means losing another piece of the person he is trying to be for her. The tragedy is in the accumulation. No single use of the crown is enough to destroy Simon, but the uses add up. They compound, they create a debt that can never be repaid, because the currency he is spending, his memories, his personality, his sense of self, is the kind of currency that cannot be earned back. Once a memory is gone, it is gone. Once a piece of Simon disappears, the space it occupied does not sit empty waiting to be refilled. It gets absorbed by the crown's influence, replaced by ice and static and the chattering nonsense of a mind that is no longer fully connected to the person it belongs to. This is why I Remember You hits so hard even on rewatch, because you know what each smile costs. You know what each song means. You know that every moment of clarity Simon has is borrowed time, a brief window of coherence in a storm of dissolution that will close again before either of them can say the things they need to say. The clock is always running, the crown is always hungry, and Simon and Marceline are always running out of time. But the sadness of Simon and Marceline is not just about what happens to Simon. It is about what happens to Marceline afterward. She survives, she grows up, she becomes a vampire. She lives for centuries, and for all of those centuries, she carries the memory of a man who chose to destroy himself, to keep her safe. She watches the Ice King stumble through the world, a punchline in a kingdom full of candy people, and she never tells him who he used to be. Not because she does not want to, because she has tried and it does not work. The crown does not allow it. Simon is gone, and the thing wearing his face does not understand why the vampire girl gets sad when he comes around. You could argue that Marceline is the saddest character in Adventure Time, not because the worst things happen to her, but because she remembers all of them. She is immortal. She cannot forget every loss she has ever experienced is still fresh, still present, still sitting in the room with her every time she picks up her bass guitar and plays a song that sounds like it is about something else, but is always about the people she has lost. Think about what that means for a moment. Really think about it. 1,000 years of watching people you care about grow old and die while you stay the same. 1,000 years of making friends and losing them, not to conflict or distance, but to the simple passage of time. 1,000 years of starting over, again and again, knowing that every new relationship carries the same expiration date, that everyone you meet is temporary in a way that you are not. Marceline has developed ways of coping with this. She acts tough, she keeps people at a distance, she pretends not to care about things she cares about deeply, she hides behind sarcasm and cool detachment and a rock and roll aesthetic that says I do not need anyone, when the truth is the opposite. Marceline needs people desperately. She needs connection the way other people need air. But she has learned, through 1,000 years of painful experience, that connection comes with a cost. She will always be the one to pay. Her friendship with Bubblegum is the best example of this. The show reveals, gradually and with great care, that Marceline and Bubblegum have a history that predates Finn and Jake by centuries. They were close once. More than close. They were important to each other in ways that neither of them fully articulates, but both of them remember. And then something happened. Something that pushed them apart. Something that turned closeness into distance and warmth into awkwardness. The show never fully explains what went wrong between them, and that is part of the genius. Because real relationships do not have a single point of failure. They deteriorate through accumulation, through small misunderstandings that become large misunderstandings, through assumptions that harden into certainties, through the slow realization that the person you love is not the person you thought they were, or worse, that they are exactly who you thought they were and you just did not want to see it. Marceline and Bubblegum eventually find their way back to each other. The show ends with them kissing, a moment that was both celebrated and long overdue. But even that reunion carries the weight of everything that came before it. The centuries of distance, the arguments, the fear of being vulnerable with someone who has already seen you at your worst. They choose each other in the end, but the choosing does not erase the pain. It sits on top of it, love built on scar tissue, stronger for the breaking, but marked by it forever. The Mushroom War itself is a sadness the show parcels out in fragments, never giving you the full picture at once, because the full picture would be too much. What we know is this. Sometime in the early 21st century, humanity destroyed itself. The mechanism was nuclear. The show calls it the Mushroom War because of the shape of the explosion clouds and because naming it something whimsical makes it bearable enough to exist in a children's cartoon. But there is nothing whimsical about what the show actually depicts when it pulls back the curtain. The mushroom bomb was a mutagenic weapon dropped on a major city somewhere in North America. The detonation created a crater filled with a glowing green substance. This substance is directly connected to the Lich, the show's primary antagonist, a being of pure extinction who exists for no other reason than to end all life. The bomb did not just kill people. It created the embodiment of death itself. Every monster, every mutation, every twisted thing wandering the land of Ooh can trace its origin back to the moment humanity decided to end the world. And in the middle of that ending, a little girl named Marceline was trying to find her mother. The show reveals this story slowly, across multiple episodes and specials. Marceline's mother, whose name is Elise, was human. She survived the initial blast, but not the aftermath. The radiation poisoned her. The show depicts her growing weaker, growing thinner, growing quieter. She knows she is dying, she knows her daughter is watching, and in her final act of motherhood, she sends Marceline away. She tells her to find the shelter. She does not tell her the truth, which is that she does not want her daughter to watch her die. Marceline goes to the shelter. She finds the blast door open. Inside, there are skeletons. The people who were supposed to be safe died anyway, and somewhere behind her, in a house she will never return to, her mother is dying alone. This is the backstory of a character in a cartoon that also features a talking, lumpy purple princess and a penguin named Gunter. Adventure Time never saw a contradiction between its silliness and its sorrow. It held both at the same time in the same frame and trusted you to feel both without being told which one mattered more. The show builds this world of aftermath with a patience that borders on archaeological. In the background of nearly every outdoor scene, if you look carefully, you can find evidence of what came before. A broken highway overpass, covered in vines, a toppled skyscraper half submerged in a swamp, the rusted hull of a tank sitting in a field where candy people play. These are not Easter eggs designed for sharp-eyed fans. They are the show's way of saying, without words, that the ground you are standing on used to be a world. And the world ended, and what grew back is beautiful, but it grew from something terrible. The show also uses the passage of time as a tool of sadness in ways that few animated series have attempted. Most cartoons exist in a perpetual present. Characters do not age, seasons do not change. The status quo is reset at the end of every episode. Adventure Time refused to do this. Its characters age, its world changes. Finn grows from 12 to 17 over the course of the series. His voice deepens, his face changes, his relationships evolve in ways that cannot be undone. And the show asks you to sit with the implications of that aging, to understand that every adventure Finn goes on is one adventure closer to the last. One, that the boy with the hat is becoming a man, and the man will eventually become old, and the old man will eventually die. This is especially painful because the show keeps reminding you of what aging looks like in Ooh. The Ice King is old. He is ancient, really, kept alive by the crown's magic, but wearing a body that shows every one of his years. His beard, his hunch, his failing eyesight. These are not comedic details. They are the visible markers of a life that has been going on for far too long. A body that has outlived the mind that used to inhabit it. A shell carrying on because the magic will not let it stop. And there is Marceline's perspective on time, which is perhaps the most unsettling of all. Marceline has watched civilizations rise and fall. She has watched forests grow over cities and rivers change their courses, and mountains wear down to hills. She has watched the land itself forget what it used to be, and she remembers all of it. Every ruined building she passes was a building she might have passed when it was new. Every field of grass was once a parking lot or a schoolyard or someone's backyard where children played. Marceline walks through the land of Ooh like a ghost haunting a house that has been remodeled so many times that no one else recognizes it as the same building. The show gives us one of its most devastating images in the episode Evicted, in Season 1. Marceline returns to a cave she used to live in and finds Finn and Jake squatting there. She wants them out, not because she needs the space, because the cave is hers. It belongs to her past. It is one of the few places in Ooh that still looks the way it looked 1,000 years ago. And she needs that continuity the way a drowning person needs something solid to hold on to. The cave is her anchor. It is the proof that some things do not change, that some things survive, that not everything she has ever known is gone. This need for continuity drives much of Marceline's behavior throughout the series. She holds on to objects, She keeps Hambo, the stuffed toy Simon gave her during the Mushroom War, for centuries. When Hambo is lost, the grief she feels is out of proportion to what you would expect from someone losing a toy. Unless you understand that Hambo is not a toy. Hambo is evidence. Hambo is proof that Simon was real, that their time together happened, that the man who sang her the Cheers theme song in the ruins of the world existed and loved her and tried his best. When Hambo was eventually returned to her, in the season 5 episode Skywitch, the moment is played quietly. There is no fanfare, no dramatic music, just Marceline holding a worn-out stuffed animal and remembering everything it represents. And in that moment, the distance between what Hambo is, a toy, and what Hambo means, 1,000 years of love and loss compressed into a handful of stitches and stuffing, is the entire show. That gap between the thing and its meaning is where all of Adventure Time's sadness lives. The sadness deepens when you follow Finn's story. Finn the human is, on the surface, the simplest character in the show. He is a boy, he has a sword, he fights monsters, he is brave and good, and wants to help people. He is the hero, and the show spends 10 seasons slowly, carefully, mercilessly teaching him that being the hero is not enough. The first real crack appears in season 6. The premiere, which aired on April 21st, 2014, is a 2-part episode called Wake Up and Escape from the Citadel. Finn has spent years wondering about his father, his biological father, the man who left him in the woods as a baby, where he was found by Jake's parents and raised as their own. Finn has built an idea of this man in his head. He imagines someone noble, someone who had a reason, someone who will explain everything and make the absence make sense. He finds his father in the Citadel, a cosmic prison for the worst criminals in the multiverse. His name is Martin, and Martin is not noble. He is not tragic. He is not a man with a good reason. He is a coward. A selfish, careless, grinning coward who looks at his son and feels nothing. Not hatred, not guilt, not love. Nothing. Finn is simply not important enough to register. When Martin escapes, Finn grabs onto the vessel carrying him away. He holds on because he cannot accept what he is seeing. He cannot accept that his father does not care. The grass sword, a cursed weapon bonded to his arm, wraps around his hand and the vessel and pulls. The pressure builds, and then Finn's arm is torn from his body. The show does not cut away. It does not soften it. A 14-year-old boy loses his arm because he could not let go of a father who was already gone. The metaphor is so precise, it barely qualifies as metaphor. Finn was holding onto something that was never going to hold him back, and it cost him a part of himself. What follows is a stretch of episodes where Finn is different, not just physically, but emotionally. He has nightmares, he becomes reckless, he makes decisions that the Finn of earlier seasons would never have made. The show does not announce this as a depression arc or a trauma response. It simply shows a boy who has been broken in a way he does not have the vocabulary to describe, moving through the world slightly wrong, slightly off, slightly disconnected from the person he used to be. This is what Adventure Time does better than almost any show on television, animated or otherwise. It does not tell you that its characters are sad. It shows you the sadness in the spaces between their words, in the things they do not say, in the way they hold their bodies when they think no one is watching. Finn never sits down and delivers a monologue about fatherlessness. He just starts making choices that do not make sense, unless you understand that something inside him broke on that day in the Citadel, and he has been trying to reassemble the pieces ever since. But Finn's loss of his father is not just about the moment in the Citadel. It echoes forward and backward through the entire series. Before the Citadel, Finn had a fantasy of who his father was. After the Citadel, he has nothing, not even the fantasy. And the show takes its time exploring what it means to lose something you never actually had, because that is a particular kind of grief that does not get talked about enough. The grief of possibility. The grief of the life you imagined for yourself. The family you dreamed about. The version of reality where the father came back and everything made sense. That version never existed. But the loss of it is real. The mourning is real. And Finn carries it through every episode that follows, a weight he does not name but cannot put down. Season 5, Episode 30, Frost and Fire, aired August 5th, 2013. This is the episode where Finn destroys his first real relationship, and the way he destroys it is so deeply specifically human that it hurts to watch. Finn is dating Flame Princess. She is the first person he has loved romantically, the first person who has loved him back in a way he can understand, and he ruins it. Not through cruelty, not through indifference, through selfishness so immature it barely qualifies as malice. He manipulates Flame Princess and the Ice King into fighting each other. because watching them fight gives him exciting dreams. He does not think about the consequences. He does not think about how Flame Princess feels. He thinks about what he wants and he takes it, and when the truth comes out, she leaves. The breakup scene is quiet in the way that only real breakups are quiet. There is no screaming match. There is no dramatic declaration. There is just a girl looking at a boy and understanding for the first time that he is not who she thought he was. And a boy looking at a girl and understanding for the first time that being sorry is not the same as being forgiven. What follows is one of the most realistic depictions of a teenage boy processing his first heartbreak ever put on television. Finn does not handle it well. He does not learn a lesson and move on. He obsesses. He tries to win her back. He makes it. He enters a cycle of regret and impulse that any adult watching recognizes immediately because they have either been that person or known that person or loved that person and watched them stumble through the wreckage of their own choices. The show does not judge Finn for this. It does not turn his mistakes into a morality play. It simply shows you what it looks like when a young person encounters the consequences of their actions for the first time and discovers that consequences do not care about your intentions. You can be a good person and still do damage. You can be the hero and still be the one who breaks things. You can love someone and still be the reason they leave. Finn's romantic arc continues through the series, and each relationship teaches him something. But the lessons are never clean. They are messy and contradictory and incomplete the way real emotional growth always is. By the end of the series, Finn is not a boy who has figured out love. He is a young man who has learned that love is not something you figure out. It is something you practice imperfectly, over and over, hoping that each attempt is a little less clumsy than the last. There is an episode in the 6th season called Breezy, the 6th episode, that captures this arc at its lowest point. Finn is in a depressive spiral after losing his arm, and his father, he is going through the motions of living but not really living. He kisses girls he does not care about. He takes risks that serve no purpose. He is numb in the way that people become numb when feeling things becomes too expensive and they decide, consciously or not, to stop paying the price. Breezy is a controversial episode among fans. Some find it uncomfortable, some find it confusing. But its emotional core is precise. It is about a boy who has been so thoroughly hurt by the people who are supposed to love him that he has stopped believing love is real. He has not stopped wanting it. And the distance between wanting something and trusting it is the distance between Finn at the beginning of the series, open and eager and running toward every connection with his arms wide open. And Finn in season 6, closed off and guarded and moving through relationships like a tourist in a country where he does not speak the language. The show does not fix this quickly. It takes seasons, it takes failures, it takes moments of connection that Finn does not recognize as connection until much later, when he looks back and realizes that the people around him were reaching out the whole time, and he was too hurt to reach back. Growth in Adventure Time is not a straight line, it is a spiral. You pass the same points over and over, each time from a slightly different angle, each time understanding a little more about why you keep ending up here. Finn's growth is mirrored by the show's own maturation. The early seasons of Adventure Time are lighter, more episodic, more concerned with adventure, and less concerned with consequence. But as the seasons progress, the show begins to accumulate weight. Choices start to have repercussions that last beyond a single episode. Characters change in ways that cannot be reversed. The world itself shifts and evolves, kingdoms rising and falling, alliances forming and dissolving, the political landscape of Ooo becoming more complex and more morally ambiguous with every passing season. This maturation is its own kind of sadness, because it means that the show you started watching is not the show you end up watching. The silly cartoon about a boy and his dog in a candy kingdom becomes a meditation on loss, identity, responsibility, and the things we sacrifice for the people we love. And you cannot go back. You cannot return to the innocence of the early episodes without carrying the knowledge of what comes later. Once you know that Simon is the Ice King, you cannot watch the Ice King the same way. Once you know that Finn will lose his arm, you cannot watch him swing his sword without flinching. Once you know that Jake will die, every moment of their friendship becomes heavier, more precious, more fragile. This is what the show does to its audience that no one talks about. It does not just tell sad stories, it retroactively changes the stories it has already told. Every rewatch of Adventure Time is sadder than the last, because every rewatch adds another layer of context, another piece of knowledge that transforms a funny moment into a heartbreaking one. The Ice King chasing princesses in season 1 is funny until you know who he used to be. Finn's enthusiasm for adventure is charming until you know what adventure will cost him. Jake's easy laughter is warm until you know how cold the silence will be without it. Princess Bubblegum's sadness is different. It is the sadness of someone who has sacrificed everything for responsibility and woken up one morning to discover that the sacrifice was the thing that destroyed what she was trying to protect. Bonnibel Bubblegum is, depending on how you read the timeline, somewhere between 800 and 1,000 years old. She created the Candy Kingdom. She created its citizens. She is, in the most literal sense, the mother of her people. And she has spent centuries being the smartest person in every room, making the hard decisions, carrying the weight of governance and defense and diplomacy and science and survival, all while maintaining the cheerful facade of a princess made of bubblegum who lives in a castle made of candy. Season 7, Episode 2. Varmints aired November 3rd, 2015. Bubblegum has been deposed from her throne by the king of Oo, a con artist who won an election she did not take seriously. She is living in a cabin, stripped of her title and her kingdom, and the identity she has built over centuries. Marceline comes to visit. They go into the old tunnels beneath the Candy Kingdom to deal with a pest problem. And in the darkness, surrounded by roots and dirt and the bones of a kingdom she built with her own hands, Bubblegum breaks. She cries, not performatively, not dramatically. She cries the way someone cries when they have been holding it in for so long that the release feels more like collapse than relief. She tells Marceline that she thought if she shut everything out and just focused on work, it would be okay. She thought that if she made enough sacrifices, enough hard calls, enough lonely nights in the lab solving problems that no one else could solve, the kingdom would be safe and the people would be happy and it would all be worth it. But it was not worth it, because the work pushed everyone away, the sacrifices became habits, the hard calls became walls, and by the time she looked up from the microscope, the people she loved were gone. Not dead. Just distant, just far enough away that she could not reach them without admitting that she was the one who created the distance. This scene hits differently depending on where you are in your own life. If you are young, it is sad because Bubblegum is crying and she is a character you care about. If you are older, it is devastating because you recognize the pattern. You have seen it in your parents, your mentors, your friends, yourself. The person who works too hard and loves too quietly and wakes up one day in an empty room, wondering where everyone went. But Bubblegum's sadness goes deeper than loneliness. It goes to the fundamental nature of what she is and what she has done. Bubblegum creates life. She has done it hundreds of times. She built the candy people from scratch, each one a sentient being with thoughts and feelings and fears. She is their mother, their queen, their god. And she carries that weight with a precision that sometimes looks like coldness, but is actually the opposite. It is the desperate rigidity of someone who knows that if she lets herself feel everything she should feel about what she has created, she will never be able to function again. Because here's the thing the show slowly reveals about Bubblegum over the course of 10 seasons. She has made mistakes. Serious ones. She created Lemongrab and could not fix him. She created the Rattleballs and then ordered their destruction when they became inconvenient. She built surveillance systems to monitor her own citizens without their knowledge or consent. She made decisions that prioritized the kingdom's safety over individual freedom. And she did it with the calm certainty of someone who has been making those decisions for so long that she has forgotten there was ever a time when they bothered her. The show does not make Bubblegum a villain for this. It does something harder. It makes her a person who has done questionable things for understandable reasons and has to live with the gap between what she intended and what she caused. She wanted to protect her people. She did protect her people, but the protection came at a cost, and the cost was paid by individuals she never stopped to consider, beings she created and then managed, lives she brought into existence and then shaped according to her own blueprint without asking whether the blueprint was kind. And then there is Lemongrab, who might be the saddest character of all, because his sadness is the kind no one wants to look at directly. Lemongrab is not sympathetic in the way Simon is sympathetic. He is not quiet in the way Marceline is quiet. He is loud. He is abrasive. He screams. He punishes. He makes every room he enters worse by being in it. And all of that, every single bit of it, is because he was made wrong. Princess Bubblegum created Lemongrab as an experiment. She was trying to make a new candy person. Something went wrong in the process, something fundamental, something she could not fix. Lemongrab came into the world screaming, and he never stopped. He does not know how to interact with other people. He does not know how to feel comfortable in his own skin. He does not know how to exist without being in pain, because his entire existence is a mistake that his creator does not know how to correct. The show introduces him in Season 3, Episode 5, Too Young. On the surface, it is a comedy episode. Lemon Grab is the absurd tyrant who shows up and makes everyone miserable with his ridiculous rules and his high-pitched screaming. But underneath the comedy, there is something deeply uncomfortable happening. Lemon Grab is behaving the way he behaves because he was built to be this way. He did not choose to be difficult. He did not choose to be unlikable. He was created by someone who was supposed to be the smartest person in Oo. And that person made him broken and then sent him to live in a castle by himself because she did not know what else to do with him. Season 4, Episode 20, You Made Me. The title alone tells you everything. Lemon Grab confronts Bubblegum with the fundamental question of his existence. You made me. You are responsible for what I am. You brought me into this world, and the world you brought me into does not have a place for me. And I do not have the tools to make one, because you did not give them to me. Bubblegum's solution is to create a second Lemon Grab. A companion. Someone who can understand him because they are the same. And for a while it works. The two Lemon Grabs are happy together. They build a life. They govern Castle Lemon Grab. They are, for the first and only time, not alone. But the show does not let this last. By the end of their arc, one Lemon Grab has consumed the other, literally eaten him. The relationship that was supposed to save them both becomes the thing that destroys them. What makes Lemon Grab devastating is what he represents about creation itself. He is the answer to a question that no one in the show is comfortable asking. What happens when you create life and the life you create is suffering? What do you owe to a being who exists because of your choices, who cannot exist any other way, who is in pain every moment of every day because of the way you built them? Bubblegum never fully answers this question. She tries. She makes the second Lemon Grab. She sends him candy citizens to govern. She does everything she can think of except the one thing that might actually matter, which is to sit with him in his pain and acknowledge that his pain is her responsibility. Root Beer Guy understood something about the Candy Kingdom that most characters never articulated. Root Beer Guy was a minor character, a candy citizen made of root beer, who appeared in a handful of episodes and became, in his quiet way, one of the most human characters in the entire show. He had a wife named Cherry Cream Soda. He had a job he did not love. He had dreams that seemed too big for his small candy body. He wanted to be a detective. He wanted to matter. He wanted to be more than what he was designed to be. In the 6th season episode, Something Big, Root Beer Guy dies. He dies heroically, protecting the Candy Kingdom, putting up a force field that cost him his life. The show does not dwell on this. There is no extended death scene. There is no dramatic goodbye. Root Beer Guy simply stops existing, and Princess Bubblegum says rest in peace, and the episode moves on. But the aftermath lingers. Cherry Cream Soda grieves. She mourns her husband the way real people mourn, not with dramatic wailing, but with the slow, steady ache of waking up every morning in a bed that is too big, eating dinner at a table with an empty chair, learning to use the word was instead of is when she talks about the person she loved. The show gives this grief space. It does not resolve it quickly. It lets Cherry Cream Soda sit in her loss, feel it, carry it forward into future episodes where she eventually moves on, not because she has gotten over it, but because the days keep coming and she has to keep filling them. Cherry Cream Soda's grief teaches the audience something that most children's shows are afraid to say. Moving on is not the same as getting over. You never get over the loss of someone you love. You learn to carry it. You learn to walk with the weight. You learn to build a new life on top of the ruins of the old one, the way the land of Oo was built on top of the ruins of human civilization. The new life is real. The new life can be good. But the old life is still there, underneath, and some days you can feel it shifting beneath your feet, reminding you of what used to stand where you are standing now. The show extends this understanding of grief to characters who do not even realize they are grieving. The Candy People, for example, live in a kingdom built by someone who created them to fill a void. Bubblegum made them because she was lonely. She was a being of immense intelligence and power, alone in a world that had nothing to offer her, and she built a family. She built friends. She built subjects. She built an entire civilization because the loneliness was intolerable and creation was the only tool she had. But the Candy People do not know this. They do not know that they exist because a brilliant, lonely scientist needed someone to talk to. They do not know that their entire civilization is, at its root, one person's answer to the question of how to survive being alone. They go about their cheerful, sugary lives, trusting their princess, following her rules, living in the houses she built for them and eating the food she engineered for them, never suspecting that the ground they stand on is made of someone else's grief. This connects to one of the show's deepest and most unsettling ideas, that the world we live in, the structures and systems and institutions that seem solid and permanent and natural, might be built on foundations of pain that have been buried so deep no one remembers they are there. That the things we take for granted, the stability, the order, the sense that someone is in charge and knows what they are doing, might be the end result of someone's desperate attempt to cope with a loss so vast that building an entire kingdom was the only way to manage it. Bubblegum is not the only character who builds in response to loss. Simon builds a kingdom of ice because the crown demands it. Marceline builds a persona of toughness because vulnerability has cost her too much. Finn builds a heroic identity because the alternative is being the abandoned boy in the woods who no one came back for. Everyone in Ooh is building something, and the something they build is almost always an attempt to fill a space that was created by an absence. The show never condemns this. It never suggests that building in response to loss is wrong or unhealthy or something that should be stopped. It simply notices it. It points at the building and then points at the empty space beneath it and says, look at what is underneath. Look at why this exists. Not to tear it down, just to know, just to understand that the beautiful things in your life might have roots in something painful, and that this does not make them less beautiful. It makes them more so. A kingdom built on grief is still a kingdom. A friendship formed in desperation is still a friendship. A love chosen in the aftermath of abandonment is still a love. The origin does not determine the value. The pain does not contaminate the joy. Root Beer Guy's death is not the saddest moment in Adventure Time, but it might be the most real, because it is the kind of death that happens every day, in every city, in every house where someone used to live. It is the death of a person who was not the main character of anyone's story except his wife's. The universe did not stop. The kingdom did not fall. The hero did not weep. A good person died, and the world absorbed the loss the way it absorbs all losses, quietly, completely, without ceremony. Then there is BMO, beautiful, strange, innocent BMO, a sentient video game console the size of a lunchbox, who lives with Finn and Jake and talks in a high-pitched voice and plays pretend and does not fully understand the world but loves it completely. Season 5, Episode 28, Be More. BMO's core system drivers crash and Finn and Jake take BMO back to the MO factory where BMO was built. There, they meet Mo, BMO's creator. Mo is old, very old. He has been alive for a long time, kept going by cybernetic parts and sheer stubbornness. And he tells them the story of why he built BMO. Mo built BMO to take care of his son, but Mo never had a son. He built a caretaker for a child that did not exist, and then he sent BMO out into the world alone, hoping that it would find a family, hoping that it would find someone's little boy to take care of. That is BMO's entire existence. A machine built for a purpose it was never able to fulfill. Wandering through the world with an emptiness it does not have the processing power to name, filling the gap with imagination and play and a sweetness so genuine, it makes you ache. BMO plays pretend constantly. BMO talks to its reflection. BMO creates elaborate scenarios where it is a detective, a cowboy, a mother, a hero. And every single one of these games is at its core BMO trying to be the thing it was built to be for a child that was never born. The show never frames this as tragic. That is what makes it tragic. BMO does not know it is sad. BMO does not understand the gap between its purpose and its reality. BMO is happy in the way that only someone who does not fully comprehend their own situation can be happy. And the audience sits there, watching this tiny machine play pretend in the corner of a treehouse, knowing something that BMO will never know, feeling a sadness that BMO will never feel. There is a particular kind of cruelty in creating a character who is too innocent to understand their own tragedy. Adventure Time did this with BMO, and it did it so well that BMO became one of the most beloved characters in modern animation. People love BMO because BMO is pure, but BMO is pure because BMO does not know enough to be anything else. And that purity, that ignorance, that gap between what BMO is and what BMO was meant to be is one of the saddest things the show ever built. BMO finds a version of the family Mo imagined, of course. Finn and Jake become BMO's people, the treehouse becomes BMO's home, and there are moments scattered throughout the series where you can see BMO performing the role Mo designed it for. Taking care of the house, making breakfast, singing songs to help Finn sleep. Small domestic acts of love that are so ordinary you almost miss the fact that they are the fulfillment of a 1,000-year-old wish made by an old man who wanted to be a father and never was. But even this fulfillment carries weight, because Finn and Jake are not children. They do not need a caretaker. They are BMO's friends, not BMO's charges. And BMO adapts the way it adapts to everything by pretending. By playing the role it was built for in a context that does not quite fit, adjusting its purpose to the reality it found, never quite noticing the seam between what it was designed to do and what it actually does. The Islands miniseries adds yet another dimension to the show's catalog of sadness. Airing across 4 nights in late January and early February of 2017, as part of the 8th season, Islands follows Finn, Jake, BMO, and Susan Strong as they cross the ocean to discover what happened to the rest of humanity. And what they find is both more hopeful and more devastating than anyone expected. Humanity survived. Not all of it, but enough. A group of humans escaped the Mushroom War on a container ship and sailed to a remote island chain where they built a new civilization. Over 1,000 years, they developed advanced technology, established social systems, and created a functioning society. They survived, they adapted, they went on. And Finn's mother was one of them. Her name is Minerva Campbell. She was a helper, a caretaker, a woman who devoted her life to caring for others. When a plague struck the islands, Minerva uploaded her consciousness into a computer network, creating an army of robot helpers to protect the remaining humans. She saved her people, she lost her body, she became something between a person and a program. A mother who could no longer hold her son, a caretaker who could no longer touch the people she cared for. When Finn finds her, the reunion is not what you expect. There is joy, yes. There is recognition, but there is also the impossible distance between a boy who has lived his entire life as the last human in a land of candy and a mother who has spent 1,000 years as a digital ghost protecting a civilization he never knew existed. They cannot hug, they cannot sit together. They cannot do the small physical things that make a reunion feel real. They can only talk across a screen, across 1,000 years of absence, trying to compress a lifetime of missed moments into a conversation that will never be long enough. Finn learns something on the islands that reframes everything he thought he knew about his father. He learns that Martin was not always the careless man he met in the Citadel. He learns that Martin loved Minerva. He learns that Martin tried to protect baby Finn from a threat and was injured in the process, which led to his being separated from his family and eventually imprisoned in the Citadel, where the cosmic influence of that place eroded his empathy and his memory over centuries. Martin did not choose to be a bad father. He was broken into one. The same way Simon was broken into the Ice King, the same way Marceline was broken into a vampire, the same way the world was broken into Ooh. This does not excuse Martin. The show is careful about that. It does not ask you to forgive him. It asks you to understand that the line between the person Martin was and the person Martin became is not a line he drew himself. It was drawn by circumstance, by trauma, by the accumulated weight of a universe that does not care what kind of person you want to be. And understanding that does not make Finn's pain go away. It just makes the pain more complicated. Harder to hate, harder to release, harder to turn into a simple story about a bad man who abandoned his son. Finn also has to make a choice on the islands. His mother wants him to stay. She wants him to live among the humans, to be safe, to be protected by the systems she has built. For the first time in his life, Finn has access to the thing he has always wanted: a human community, a mother who loves him, a place where he belongs by default, not by adoption, not by accident, but by blood and history, and the simple fact of what he is. And Finn chooses to go back to Ooh. He chooses Jake, he chooses the candy people, and the treehouse, and the strange, broken, beautiful world that raised him. He chooses the people who became his family over the people who were supposed to be his family. And the choosing is its own kind of sadness because it means admitting that the thing you have been looking for your whole life is not the thing you need. It means saying goodbye to a possibility that you carried inside you for years. The possibility of a mother and a home and a place in the world that feels effortless, and walking away from it because the effortful life, the chosen life, the life you built out of nothing in a land of candy and monsters, is the one that is actually yours. There is a philosophy embedded in Finn's choice that the show never makes explicit, but that permeates everything it does. The philosophy is this: the family you choose is not a consolation prize for the family you lost. It is not second best. It is not the backup plan. The family you choose is the real family, the one that counts, the one that shapes you into the person you become. Finn was not rescued by Jake's parents. He was found by them. And the difference between being rescued and being found is the difference between charity and belonging. Finn belongs in Ooh. Not because he was born there, he was not. Not because it is the best place for him, it probably is not. He belongs there because the people he loves are there, and the people who love him are there. And the life he has built, messy and painful and imperfect as it is the life he chose. And choosing it actively, deliberately, in the face of an alternative that would be easier and safer and more comfortable is the bravest thing Finn ever does. Braver than fighting the Lich. Braver than facing his father. Braver than any sword fight or any rescue mission. Because choosing the hard thing when the easy thing is right there, offered freely, no strings attached, that is the kind of courage the world does not give medals for. This connects to something deeper in the show's philosophy. Adventure Time is, at its heart, a show about chosen families. Almost no one in Ooo is related to the people they love most. Finn and Jake are adopted brothers. Marceline and Simon are not blood relatives. Bubblegum created her citizens, but she is not their biological parent. BMO was built by a stranger and raised by friends. The entire social fabric of Ooo is constructed from choice, from people who looked at each other and said, I choose you, not because I have to, not because we share blood, or history, or obligation, but because you are the person I want next to me when things get hard. This is beautiful. It is also fragile, because chosen families can be unchosen. Blood ties are permanent. You cannot stop being someone's child or someone's sibling, no matter how much distance you put between you. But you can stop being someone's friend. You can stop being someone's partner. You can wake up one morning and decide that the person you chose is not the person you want anymore, and walk away. And the bond dissolves because it was never held together by anything stronger than will. Adventure Time knows this. It knows that the same freedom that makes chosen families beautiful also makes them terrifying. Every relationship in Ooo exists on a foundation of ongoing consent, of daily renewal, of the unspoken agreement to keep showing up even when showing up is hard. And the sadness of the show, much of it, comes from the moments when someone stops showing up, when the consent is withdrawn, when the renewal fails, when someone walks away from a bond that was only ever held together by the decision to maintain it. Martin walked away from Finn. Hudson walked away from Marceline. Bubblegum walked away from her friends. The Ice King walked away from everyone, not by choice, but by the crown's slow erosion of his ability to choose. These departures are not the same. Some are cruel, some are tragic, some are the result of circumstances no one could control, but they all hurt the same way. They all leave the same shape of absence, which is that love is necessary and love is fragile, and the thing you build your life on can disappear at any moment for any reason, and there is nothing you can do about it except keep choosing, keep showing up, keep renewing the bond in the hope that this time it will last. Betty Groff's story is the final and perhaps most tragic parallel to Simon's. Betty was the woman Simon loved before the crown took him. She left when the crown's influence became too much to bear. But unlike most characters who leave in Adventure Time, Betty came back. In the later seasons, through a series of events involving time travel and interdimensional magic, Betty returns to O and discovers what has become of Simon. She finds him as the Ice King, a deranged, lonely creature who does not remember her name, and she decides, with the fierce determination of someone who refuses to accept loss, that she will fix him. She will undo the crown. She will bring Simon back. This is a love story. It is also a horror story, because Betty's quest to save Simon consumes her the way the crown consumed Simon. She becomes obsessed. She takes on the power and madness of Magic Man, a deity who lost his own wife and went insane from the grief. Betty inherits his power and his madness simultaneously, and the line between saving Simon and destroying herself becomes thinner and thinner until it disappears entirely. In the series finale, when the cosmic entity Gold descends upon Ooo and threatens to unmake reality itself, Betty makes her choice. She uses the crown's wish-granting power, fueled by Golb's chaos, to make a wish. Her truest wish, and her truest wish is not to be happy. It is not to have Simon back the way he was. Her truest wish is to protect Simon, at all costs, forever, no matter what it takes. The wish fuses Betty with Golb. She becomes part of the cosmic entity, absorbed into a being of pure chaos and dissolution. She is gone, not dead, exactly. Something worse, something stranger. She exists as part of the fabric of the universe, inseparable from the thing that threatened to destroy everything she loved, protecting Simon from inside the chaos itself. And Simon is restored. The crown releases him. He remembers his name. He remembers Betty. He remembers everything. And the first thing he feels, the first emotion that Simon Petrikov experiences after centuries of being the Ice King, is grief. Because the woman who loved him enough to unmake herself is gone, And the reason she is gone is because she loved him too much to let him stay broken. And the cost of that love was everything she was. This is the cruelest irony Adventure Time ever constructed. Simon and Betty spent their entire story trying to reach each other. Simon lost his mind trying to protect Marceline. They were both destroyed by the same impulse, the same love, the same willingness to sacrifice everything for someone else. And in the end, when Simon is finally himself again, finally able to remember and feel and love the person he wants to love, is part of the void. The show does not resolve this. There is no happy ending for Simon and Betty. There is just Simon standing in the aftermath of the finale, alive and aware and heartbroken, carrying the full weight of everything that was done to him and everything that was done for him, trying to figure out how to live in a world where the woman who saved him is woven into the chaos at the edge of reality. You could argue that this is the saddest story in Adventure Time, not because it is the most dramatic or the most violent or the most shocking, but because it is the most complete. It is a story about love that begins with loss and ends with loss and never at any point suggests that the love itself was a mistake. Simon and Betty loved each other. That love destroyed them both, and neither of them, given the choice, would have loved less. The Stakes miniseries, which aired across 4 nights in November of 2015, 8 episodes that constitute the most sustained exploration of grief and identity the show ever attempted, takes Marceline's sadness and turns it into something almost unbearable. Stakes is, on its surface, about Marceline trying to cure her vampirism. Bubblegum devises a way to remove the vampiric essence from Marceline's body, allowing her to become mortal again. But the procedure releases the essence of every vampire Marceline has ever killed, and they return as physical beings that must be defeated again. The real story of Stakes, though, is not about vampires. It is about change. It is about what happens when you try to undo the things that have defined you, and whether undoing them makes you more yourself or less. Marceline became a vampire as a teenager in the aftermath of the Mushroom War, in a world that had lost everything. She has been a vampire for centuries. It is not something she chose, not exactly, but it is something she has lived with for so long that it has become part of who she is. And now she wants to be human again. She wants to age, she wants to change. She wants to stop being frozen in the body of a teenager while the world moves forward without her. The miniseries contains one of the most emotionally devastating moments in the entire run of Adventure Time. In the episode called Everything Stays, which is the 7th episode of Season 7, we see a flashback to young Marceline and her mother. They are sitting together before the worst of the Mushroom War, before the radiation takes Elise, before everything falls apart. And Marceline's mother sings her a lullaby. The song is called Everything Stays. It was written by Rebecca Sugar, who had left Adventure Time by then to create Steven Universe, but returned to write this one song. The melody is simple. The words are about how things you leave behind are still there when you come back, but they are a little different, a little changed, a little further from what they were. It is a song about impermanence dressed up as a song about permanence. It is a mother telling her daughter that the world will not disappear, while knowing on some level she cannot share with a child that the world is about to disappear completely. The scene works because of what you know that young Marceline does not. You know that her mother is going to die. You know that the shelter will fail. You know that Marceline will be alone for a very long time in a world that does not look like the one her mother is describing. And you know that the song itself, the melody, the words, the feeling of being held by someone who loves you is the thing that will stay. Not the world, not the mother, not the safety. Just the memory of a song carried by a girl who will never age past the moment she lost everything. That is the cruelty and the beauty of Everything Stays, the song and the episode and the idea itself. Things do stay, memories stay, feelings stay. The shape of your mother's voice stays, even when your mother is gone. But the staying is not the same as having. You can carry something inside you forever and still ache for the real thing. You can remember every note of a lullaby and still wish, with everything you have, that someone was here to sing it. Marceline's relationship with her father, Hunson Abadir, adds another layer to her sadness. Hunson is the ruler of the Nidosphere, the land of Ooze version of hell. He is a demon. He is also, in his own careless, chaotic way, Marceline's father. And he is terrible at it. Not malicious, not cruel, just absent, distracted, selfish in the way that immortal beings are selfish. Because when you have forever, nothing feels urgent, including the needs of your daughter. Marceline's relationship with Hunson echoes Finn's relationship with Martin. Both are stories about children who deserved better fathers and never got them. Both are stories about the particular sadness of realizing that the person who was supposed to protect you is not capable of the job. But where Finn's father is indifferent, Marceline's father is oblivious. Hudson loves Marceline. He just does not know how to show it in a way that matters. He steals her fries. He tries to force her to take over the Nightosphere. He shows up at the wrong times and says the wrong things and leaves before the damage is visible. The difference between a bad parent and an absent one is the difference between a wound and an ache. A wound can heal, an ache just sits there, constant, low grade, easy to ignore until the moment it is not. Marceline has spent centuries living with this ache, adding it to the collection of aches she carries from every other loss, building a life on top of a foundation made entirely of things that hurt when she presses on them. This brings us to something the show does that almost no one talks about, which is the way it uses the land of Ooo itself as an expression of grief. The land of Ooo is beautiful. It is colorful, it is full of candy and ice cream and talking animals and magical kingdoms. And all of it, every single bit of it, exists because humanity destroyed itself. The Candy Kingdom is built on the ruins of a city. The Ice Kingdom sits on the bones of a civilization. The creatures that wander the forests and mountains of Ooo are mutations, the children of radiation and magic, and a world that reassembled itself wrong. The show rarely draws attention to this. It lets you enjoy the bright colors and the silly adventures without constantly reminding you that you are looking at a graveyard dressed up as a playground. But every now and then, the show pulls back the curtain. An old subway station appears beneath a meadow, a rusted car sits in the background of a forest scene, a human skeleton pokes out of the ground in a place where candy people are having a picnic. These details are never commented on. They are just there, like the scars on a person who has learned to live with them, present but not discussed. Part of the landscape of a world that has accepted what happened to it without ever fully processing it. The Lich is the embodiment of that unprocessed trauma. He is the Mushroom War's legacy given form, a being of pure annihilation who exists for no other purpose than to end all life. In the Season 6 episode Gold Stars, which aired on January 29, 2015, the Lich delivers a speech that cuts to the heart of what he represents. He speaks of a time, before anything existed, before even nothing existed. A time when there were only monsters. And his voice carries the weight of something ancient and vast and completely indifferent to the small lives trying to build meaning on top of a world he intends to destroy. The Lich is not sad in the way the other characters are sad. The Lich does not feel loss. The Lich does not grieve. The Lich is the thing that causes grief. He is the bomb itself, the moment of detonation extended into a consciousness, the last scream of a civilization that decided to end itself and created, in its ending, a being who would ensure that nothing ever grew back. What makes the Lich terrifying, and what makes his presence in a children's cartoon so unsettling, is that he cannot be reasoned with. He cannot be understood. He is not a villain with motivations. He is an ending. And the show places him in the middle of a world full of characters who are desperately, beautifully, stubbornly alive, and says this is what you are fighting against. Not a person, not an idea. Just the void. Just the end of everything. Patient and ancient and waiting. There is a particular type of sadness that comes from watching characters you love exist in a world where the Lich is real. It is the sadness of knowing that the happiness is temporary. Not because the show will end, though it does. Not because the characters will die, though they do, but because the world they live in contains, at its foundation, the thing that wants to undo all of it. Every laugh, every song, every kiss, every sunrise in the land of Ooo happens in the shadow of a being whose sole purpose is to make sure there are no more laughs, no more songs, no more kisses, no more sunrises. And the characters keep laughing anyway. They keep singing. They keep loving, they keep waking up and going outside and doing small things that matter to them. Not because they have defeated the Lich, but because living is what you do while the Lich is waiting. Living is the act of defiance, happiness is the rebellion. And sadness, the kind of sadness that comes from knowing how fragile all of it is the price of being alive enough to care. There is a scene in the Season 4 episode Sons of Mars that illustrates this fragility perfectly. Jake is accidentally killed, his soul sent to the 37th Dead World as a case of mistaken identity by the cosmic powers that govern life and death in Ooo. The episode resolves itself, Jake comes back, but there is a moment, a brief and terrible moment, where Finn is standing in a world without Jake. And the look on his face is not heroic. It is not determined. It is empty. Completely, devastatingly empty. The look of a person who has just realized that the thing holding their world together is gone and there is nothing underneath. The show plays this for drama in the moment, but it plants a seed that does not bloom until years later. In Together Again, when that emptiness becomes permanent. Finn without Jake is not a hero without a sidekick. It is a person without a purpose. It is a house without a foundation. It is a song with no melody, just rhythm and silence, where the notes used to be. Adventure Time understood something about friendship that most stories get wrong. Most stories treat friendship as a support structure for the main narrative. The friend is there to help the hero, to provide comic relief, to offer advice at critical moments. Adventure Time treats Finn and Jake's friendship as the main narrative. Everything else, the adventures, the romances, the world-ending threats, all of it is secondary to the central fact that these two beings chose each other and kept choosing each other and built a life together that neither of them could have built alone. That is why Jake's death hits so hard. It is not just the loss of a character, it is the loss of the relationship that defined the show. Without Finn and Jake together, Adventure Time is not Adventure Time. It is something else, something lonelier. Something that looks the same from the outside but feels hollowed out, the way a house feels after someone who lived there has moved away. The show also explores sadness through characters who experience it differently than humans do. The Fire Kingdom episodes reveal a society built on aggression and competition, where vulnerability is weakness and emotional expression is dangerous. Flame Princess grows up in this environment, locked in a lantern by her own father because her power frightened him. Raised to believe that her feelings are weapons that must be controlled rather than experienced. When Flame Princess begins to feel things for Finn, the show frames it as genuinely dangerous. Her emotions manifest as fire. Happiness makes her glow. Anger makes her burn. Sadness makes her dim. She is quite literally unable to feel things without changing the world around her. And the tragedy of her situation is that the solution everyone offers her is the same solution that caused her pain in the first place: control. Contain your feelings. Dampen your fire. Be less than what you are so that the people around you can be comfortable. Flame Princess eventually learns to manage her power, but the journey is not framed as triumph. It is framed as compromise. She does not become more herself. She becomes a version of herself that the world can tolerate. And there is a sadness in that, a quiet, structural sadness that the show acknowledges without resolving. Some people have to be smaller than they are to fit into the spaces the world provides. Some fires have to burn lower. Some feelings have to be contained. Not because containment is good, but because the alternative is burning everything down, and the people you love are standing too close. Tree Trunks is another character whose sadness operates on a frequency the show never fully explains. On the surface, Tree Trunks is a sweet old elephant who bakes apple pies and speaks in a gentle southern accent. She is comic relief. She is harmless. She is the grandmother figure in a world that does not have many grandmother figures. But Tree Trunks has a darkness to her that the show hints at without ever fully illuminating. She has been married multiple times. She has a history that predates Finn and Jake by decades, possibly centuries. She makes choices that are impulsive and sometimes reckless. And the show plays these choices for comedy, but underneath the comedy, there is a pattern. Tree Trunks is searching for something. She does not know what it is. She has been searching for it her entire life, through marriages and adventures and apple pies, and she has never found it. And she keeps looking, and the looking is so gentle and so persistent that you almost do not notice how desperate it is. In the episode Dream of Love, Tree Trunks falls in love with Mr. Pig. Their relationship is played for sweetness, but there is a moment where Tree Trunks describes what love feels like to her, and the description is tinged with something that sounds less like happiness and more like relief. As if she has been carrying a weight she did not know she was carrying, and setting it down feels so good that she confuses the absence of pain with the presence of joy. This is one of Adventure Time's most subtle observations. That sometimes what we call happiness is just the temporary cessation of a sadness we have been carrying for so long that we forgot it was there. That the relief of being held is not the same as the joy of being loved. But it feels close enough that we accept it, because the alternative is acknowledging that the sadness was there the whole time, humming quietly in the background of our lives, shaping everything we did and everyone we chose. Jake does not get talked about enough in conversations about sadness in Adventure Time, because Jake is the funny one. He stretches, he makes jokes, he eats everything. He is laid back and unbothered and seems, on the surface, like the character least affected by the weight of the world. But Jake's ease is its own kind of armor, and if you watch closely enough, you can see the moments where it cracks. Jake is afraid of the ocean. This is played for comedy in some episodes, but it connects to something deeper. Jake is afraid of things he cannot control, things that are bigger than him, things that swallow you whole and do not give you back. He is afraid of the vastness of the world and his smallness in it. He is afraid of the same thing everyone is afraid of, which is that the universe is indifferent and enormous, and does not care whether you are happy or sad, whether you live or die, whether your story means anything to anyone but you. Jake also has children, 5 of them from his relationship with Lady Rainicorn. They are half dog, half Rainicorn, and they grow up almost overnight, because that is how Rainicorn biology works. Jake goes from being a carefree bachelor to being a father in the span of a few episodes, and the show handles this with the same quiet specificity it brings to everything else. Jake loves his kids, but he does not know how to be a father. He does not have a model for it. His adoptive parents were good to him, but they kept secrets, and those secrets shape the way he understands family, which is that family is the thing that holds you together and the thing that keeps things from you at the same time. Jake's fatherhood is one of the show's gentler sadnesses. It is not dramatic, it is not traumatic. It is simply the sadness of a person who wants to do a good job and does not quite know how, who loves his children but cannot slow them down, who watches them grow into people he does not fully understand and feels the distance without knowing how to close it. There is a particular helplessness in watching your children outgrow you. Jake feels it without naming it, the same way he feels most things, with a shrug and a smile and a quiet moment when no one is looking, where the smile drops just long enough for you to see what is underneath. And then there is the relationship between Jake and Finn, which is the emotional spine of the entire show. Jake is Finn's brother, not biologically, but in every way that matters. They share a home, they share adventures, they share the kind of easy, wordless intimacy that only exists between people who have known each other so long that language becomes optional. Jake knows Finn, knows his rhythms, his fears, his blind spots, knows when to push and when to leave alone, knows that Finn's bravery is sometimes a mask for desperation and his anger is sometimes a mask for grief. What makes their relationship so powerful and so sad when you know how it ends is its asymmetry. Finn needs Jake more than Jake needs Finn. Not because Jake does not love Finn, he does, profoundly. But Jake has a life outside of their adventures. He has Lady Rainicorn, he has children. He has a capacity for contentment that Finn, with his restless heroism and his unfillable need to matter, simply does not possess. Jake can be happy doing nothing, Finn cannot. Jake can let go, Finn cannot. And this difference, this fundamental mismatch in how they relate to the world, is what makes Jake's death and Finn's response to it so devastating. There is an episode in season 5 called Puhoi, the 16th episode, which aired on April 8th, 2013. It is one of the strangest episodes in the entire series, and also one of the saddest, though the sadness does not hit you until after it is over. Finn crawls into a pillow fort that Jake has built. Inside, he discovers a portal to Pillow World, a dimension made entirely of soft things, where the people are pillows and the trees are cushions and everything is gentle and harmless. Finn lives an entire life there. He meets a woman named Rosalinen. They fall in love, they get married, they have children. Finn grows old, his hair turns gray, his body weakens, and then, surrounded by his family, his children and grandchildren, the people he has built a life with, he dies. And then he wakes up in the pillow fort, a teenager again, and he forgets everything. He forgets his children, he forgets the decades he spent building a life that felt as real as anything he has ever known. Jake asks him what happened in there, and Finn says something vague and unimportant, and they move on to the next adventure. And the entire life he lived in Pillow World is gone, erased, reduced to a fading sensation that he cannot name. The show never returns to this. Pillow World is never mentioned again. Rosalinen and the children Finn had with her are never discussed. It is as though an entire lifetime was a dream, and maybe it was, and maybe it was not. And the show refuses to tell you which. What it tells you instead, through the quiet devastation of Finn forgetting, is that lives can be real and still disappear. That love can be genuine and still be lost to something as simple as waking up. That you can build an entire world with someone and have it mean nothing, not because it did not matter, but because the universe does not keep track of the things that matter to you. Puhoi is the episode that breaks people who come back to it as adults. When you watch it as a child, it is a fun adventure in a silly pillow dimension. When you watch it as an adult, it is a meditation on mortality. On the fragility of everything you build, on the possibility that the life you are living right now, the one that feels so solid and so permanent, could dissolve like a dream the moment you stop paying attention to it. The show's treatment of time itself is a source of sadness that deepens the more you think about it. Adventure Time takes place roughly 1,000 years after the Mushroom War. 1,000 years? That number is easy to say and impossible to feel. But the show asks you to try. It asks you to consider what it means to live in a world where everything that came before, every city, every book, every name, every love story, every argument, every song sung in a car at midnight, is gone. Reduced to rubble and radiation and the fading memory of a man who cannot remember his own name. The people of Oo do not mourn the old world. They do not even know it existed, most of them. The Candy People were created after the war. The Ice Kingdom was formed by the Crown's magic. The Fire Kingdom, the lumpy space, the oceans and forests and mountains of Oo, all of it came after. The characters living in this world are building their lives on top of a grave they cannot see. And the show lets you see it, lets you feel the weight of it, while the characters go about their bright and colorful days unaware of what lies beneath their feet. This is the deepest sadness in Adventure Time. Not the personal losses, not the broken relationships, not the death and the grief and the longing. The deepest sadness is the erasure, the total, complete, irreversible erasure of everything that came before. Billions of lives, millions of stories, an entire civilization with all of its beauty and all of its cruelty. Gone. Not remembered, not honored, not even missed, just gone. And on top of that erasure, new lives, new stories, new loves and new losses, and new songs and new reasons to get out of bed in the morning. The world did not stop. It could not stop. It just changed the way everything changes, the way the lullaby says it does. A little different, a little further from what it was, but still here, still staying. The show's treatment of death deserves its own space in this conversation, because Adventure Time does not handle death the way most animated shows do. Death in Adventure Time is not dramatic. It is not a climax. It is the thing that happens after everything else, the quiet that follows the noise, and the show insists on sitting in that quiet rather than rushing past it. Fern is perhaps the best example. Fern is, to put it simply, a copy of Finn. He was created when the Finn sword and the grass sword merged, producing a being that looked like Finn, sounded like Finn, and believed for a time that he was Finn. But he was not Finn. He was something new, something that did not quite fit, something that existed in the gap between one identity and another. Fern's entire arc is an identity crisis stretched across multiple seasons. He wants to be Finn. He wants to be his own person. He does not know who that person is. He is manipulated by Gumbald, corrupted by the grass demon, turned into a weapon against the people he was supposed to be. And through all of it, the thing he wants most, the thing he can never have, is simply to be real. To be a person with a name and a history and a place in the world that is not borrowed from someone else. There is a moment in the episode Do No Harm in Season 9 where Fern tries to do something good, something simple, something that Finn would do without thinking about it. He tries to save someone, and he fails, not because he is weak or because the task is impossible, but because his body, the grass body that houses whatever he is, does not work the way Finn's body works. He reaches for the same instincts, the same reflexes, the same heroic impulse that defines Finn, and they come out wrong, distorted. Like a song played on a broken instrument. The melody is there, but the sound is not right. And the difference between the right sound and the wrong sound is the difference between being a person and being a copy of a person. Fern's self-hatred is one of the most carefully drawn emotional arcs in the series. He does not hate himself because someone told him he was bad. He hates himself because he can see, with perfect clarity, the person he should be, the person he was designed to be. And he cannot become that person no matter how hard he tries. The gap between who he is and who he wants to be is not a gap he can close through effort or growth or learning. It is a structural gap, a design flaw, something built into the foundations of his existence that no amount of willpower can repair. This is a particular kind of sadness that people who struggle with identity understand immediately. The feeling that the version of you that exists in your head, the version that is confident and capable and comfortable in the world, does not match the version of you that other people see. The feeling that you are performing yourself badly, that the role you are playing requires skills you do not possess, that everyone around you can tell the difference between the real thing and whatever you are. Fern lives in that feeling constantly. He never gets a break from it. He never wakes up and forgets for a moment that he is not quite right. The wrongness follows him everywhere, sits beside him at every meal, walks with him through every hallway, whispers to him in every quiet moment that he is a mistake, a glitch, a thing that should not exist. And the show treats this with such compassion. It does not judge Fern for his anger or his violence. It understands that these are the responses of a being in constant pain, a being who has tried every other option and found them all insufficient. Fern does not turn evil because he is bad. He turns because the alternative, continuing to exist as a failed copy of someone else, is worse than anything villainy could do to him. At least as a villain, he has a role. At least as an antagonist, he has a purpose. At least as the enemy, he is something, even if the something is wrong. There is a particular cruelty in Fern's situation that separates it from the other sadnesses in the show. Simon was a person who became something else. Marceline was a girl who survived something terrible. Finn was a boy who grew up without a father. These are tragedies, but they are tragedies that happen to real people. Fern's tragedy is that he was never real to begin with. He is a copy, a duplicate. A being who exists because of someone else's story, not because of his own. And every time he tries to step out of that story, every time he tries to become his own person, the universe reminds him that he was not meant to exist independently. He was meant to be a sword, a tool, an extension of someone else's narrative. Fern's relationship with Finn is one of the most complicated in the series. They are the same person, and they are not the same person. They share memories, but not a body. They share a name, but not an identity. Finn feels guilt about Fern, a deep structural guilt that comes from knowing that Fern's suffering is in some cosmic sense his fault. If Finn had never wielded the grass sword, Fern would never have existed. If Fern had never existed, he would never have suffered. Finn did not choose to create Fern, but Fern's existence is a consequence of Finn's choices, and that consequence weighs on him in ways the show rarely makes explicit, but always implies. In the series finale, Come Along With Me, which aired on September 3rd, 2018, Finn enters a shared dream with Fern and helps him remove the grass demon from his body. But without the demon, Fern has no body. He begins to dissolve, he begins to come apart, and in his final moments, Fern looks at Finn and accepts what is happening. He does not scream, he does not rage. He lets go. And he becomes a seed. Finn plants that seed at the remains of their destroyed treehouse. It grows into a tree, a new treehouse, years later built from the body of a person who spent his entire existence trying to be someone else, and in the end, became something no one expected. Fern did not get to be Finn. He did not get to be himself. He became a tree, and somehow, in the strange logic of Adventure Time, that was enough. The tree grows. The treehouse is rebuilt. Life continues, shaped by the body of someone who never quite found his place in it, but became the foundation for something new anyway. There is a reading of Fern's story that is hopeful. He becomes a tree, he provides shelter, he is in death more useful and more present than he ever was in life. But there is another reading, a sadder one, that sits underneath the hope like a stone at the bottom of a river. Fern never got to live. He never got to be a person who wakes up in the morning and knows who he is. He spent his entire existence in a state of becoming, reaching for an identity that kept slipping through his fingers, and the closest he ever came to being himself was the moment he stopped being anything at all. But the saddest moment in all of Adventure Time might not be in the original series at all. It might be in the Distant Lands special called Together Again, which premiered on May 20th, 2021, on HBO Max. This is the episode where we learn that Jake is dead. Not dying, not in danger. Dead. Already gone. The episode opens with an older Finn, living alone, clearly changed by years and loss, and the accumulation of everything that happens when you stop being a kid and start being a person who has lived long enough to lose people. Jake is not there, the treehouse is different, the world has moved on, and Finn is still here, which is its own kind of sadness. Finn dies too, eventually, and in the afterlife, he goes looking for Jake. Because of course he does, because that is who Finn is. He is the boy who never stops looking for the people he loves, even when they are beyond his reach, even when the looking costs him everything. The afterlife in Adventure Time is structured as a series of dead worlds, numbered from 1 to 50. The higher the number, the more peaceful the realm. Jake is in the 50th dead world, the highest level, a kind of nirvana. Finn is in the 37th. They are separated even in death by a system that neither of them designed and neither of them can control. Finn fights his way through the dead worlds to reach Jake. He does things he should not do. He breaks rules. He causes chaos. He is, once again, the hero, charging forward because the alternative is unacceptable. And when he finally reaches Jake, when they are finally in the same place again, Jake has a choice. He can stay in the 50th dead world in perfect peace, in eternal rest. Or he can leave with Finn and go back to Ooh for one more adventure, one more walk through the world they used to share. Jake chooses Finn. He always chooses Finn. And they walk out of the afterlife together, not because they have defeated death or solved the mystery of existence, but because being together is more important than being at peace. That is a thesis of Adventure Time distilled into a single choice. Connection matters more than comfort. Love matters more than rest. And the people who choose each other, who keep choosing each other across lifetimes and timelines and the vast and different machinery of the universe, are the ones who get to say they lived. But even that choice comes with sadness, because Together Again ends with the suggestion that Finn and Jake will be reincarnated, that they will find each other again in new forms, in a new world, with no memory of who they used to be. They will start over, they will forget everything, the love will remain, but the memories will not. And there is something in that idea, something in the notion of carrying a connection so deep that it survives the erasure of everything you are, that is both the most hopeful and the most heartbreaking thing the show ever proposed. The show's final image of Finn and Jake, reincarnated, finding each other again in a world they do not recognize, is the culmination of everything Adventure Time spent 10 seasons building. It is the argument that love is not a product of memory or experience or shared history. Love is something more fundamental than that. Something woven into the fabric of who you are. Deeper than your name, deeper than your face, deeper than the story you tell yourself about your life. You can strip away everything, every memory, every experience, every scar, and every song, and the love will still be there. Changed, yes. Different, yes. But present, stubbornly, impossibly present. This is a radical claim for any show to make, let alone a children's cartoon. Most stories about love treat it as a consequence of circumstances. You love someone because of who they are, because of what you have been through together, because of the specific and unrepeatable chain of events that brought you into each other's orbit. Adventure Time says no. Love is not a consequence. Love is a cause. It is the thing that creates the circumstances, not the other way around. Finn and Jake did not become brothers because they were raised together. They were raised together because they were brothers in some cosmic, pre-verbal, pre-conscious sense that the universe understood even if they did not. Whether you find this comforting or devastating depends on who you are and where you are in your life. If you have lost someone, the idea that your connection to them persists beyond death, beyond memory, beyond the boundaries of your individual existence, might be the most beautiful thing you have ever heard. If you are in the middle of losing someone, the idea that the love will survive but the person will not, that the essence will remain but the specifics will be gone, might be the cruelest thing you have ever been told. Adventure Time holds both of these responses at the same time. It does not choose between comfort and cruelty. It says both. It says the love is eternal and the person is temporary. It says the connection will survive and the memories will not. It says you will find each other again and you will not recognize each other when you do. And it presents all of this with a calm certainty that suggests the show has thought about these questions longer than most of us have been alive and has arrived at an answer that is not easy, but is true. The show's approach to sadness is, in the end, its approach to everything. Honest, specific, patient, unwilling to simplify, unwilling to look away. Adventure Time never treated its audience like children, even though many of its viewers were children. It treated them like people who were capable of feeling complex things and thinking complex thoughts and holding contradictory emotions without needing to be told which one was correct. This is what Adventure Time understood about sadness, that most shows do not. Sadness is not the opposite of happiness. Sadness is the tax you pay on love. The deeper you love, the more it costs when the thing you love changes or fades or goes away. Simon loved Marceline, and the price was his mind. Marceline loved Simon, and the price was centuries of grief. Finn loved his father, and the price was his arm and his innocence. Bubblegum loved her kingdom, and the price was everyone who was not her kingdom. BMO loved a purpose it could never fulfill. Fern loved an identity he could never claim. Jake loved Finn enough to leave paradise. Betty loved Simon enough to become part of the void. Every sad moment in this show is, at its core, a love story, not a romance. A love story. The kind of love that does not fit neatly into categories, that exists between parents and children, between friends, between a man and the memory of who he used to be. The show never ranks these loves. It never suggests that romantic love is more important than friendship, or that parental love is more valuable than the bond between adopted brothers. It treats all of them with the same care, the same specificity, the same willingness to sit in the pain of what happens when they are tested. And they are always tested. That is the other thing Adventure Time understood. Love is not a state. It is a practice. It is something you do over and over in the face of everything that tries to undo it. Simon put on the crown because he loved Marceline. Marceline kept visiting the Ice King because she loved Simon. Finn grabbed onto his father's ship because he loved the idea of a father. Bubblegum worked herself into isolation because she loved her people. These are not wise choices. They are not strategic choices. The show premiered on April 5th, 2010, and ended its original run on September 3rd, 2018. In between, it produced 283 episodes, 4 specials, a handful of comics, and an emotional vocabulary that an entire generation of viewers grew up using without realizing where they learned it. If you watched Adventure Time as a child, you absorbed something about the nature of loss that most people do not encounter until much later. If you watched it as an adult, you recognized something you already knew but had never seen articulated so precisely. The show did not invent sadness. It did not invent the idea that cartoons could be sad. But it did something that very few shows, animated or otherwise, have ever done. It made sadness feel like a natural part of the world it built, not an intrusion, not a detour from the real story. The sadness was the story, it was the soil everything else grew from. The adventures, the jokes, the songs, the sword fights, the princesses, the candy people, the stretchy dog, the boy with the hat, all of it grew from a world that had already ended, from a loss that could never be undone, from the quiet fact that everyone in the land of Ooh was living in the aftermath of something terrible and choosing, every day, to keep going anyway. That choice is what makes the sadness bearable, not the resolution of it, not the fixing of it. The continuation of it, Adventure Time never promises that things will get better. It promises that things will keep happening, that there will be new days and new people and new reasons to get out of bed, even when the old reasons are gone. That the sadness you carry does not disqualify you from joy. That you can miss someone so much it feels like a physical weight on your chest and still laugh at a joke your friend tells you the next morning. There is a moment near the end of the series finale where the camera pulls back from the land of Ooh, way back, far enough to see the shape of the continent, the curve of the planet, the vast empty space that surrounds everything. And in that pullback, you can see the scars, the craters from the Mushroom War, the mutations, the places where the world broke and healed wrong. But you can also see the life, the kingdoms, the forests, the rivers, the tiny figures moving through their tiny days, doing tiny things that matter to no one but them. That is the image Adventure Time leaves you with. A broken world full of broken people who kept going. Not because they were brave, though some of them were. Not because they were strong, though some of them were that too. They kept going because the alternative was not going, and the people they loved were still here, and the songs were still worth singing, and the mornings were still worth waking up to, even when the mornings were hard. The show ran for 8 years from 2010 to 2018. 8 years during which an entire generation grew up alongside Finn, watching him change as they changed, feeling his losses as echoes of their own. The children who started watching Adventure Time in elementary school were graduating high school by the time it ended. They had lived through their own mushroom wars, their own crown-induced transformations, their own moments of reaching for something and watching it slip away. And the show knew this. It knew that its audience was growing up, and it grew with them. The early seasons gave you sword fights and candy monsters and the simple pleasure of a boy and his dog saving the day. The later seasons gave you philosophical complexity, moral ambiguity, and the slow recognition that saving the day is not the same as fixing the world. The show did not betray its younger audience by becoming darker. It trusted them to grow alongside it, to meet it where it was, to understand that the world was getting more complicated because they were getting old enough to see the complications. There is a generation of people walking around right now who learned about grief from a cartoon, who learned about dementia from a blue wizard, who learned about abandonment from a boy in a white hat, who learned about the weight of responsibility from a princess made of bubblegum, who learned about the difference between being alive and being present from a sentient video game console, who learned that love is a choice you make every day from a dog who could stretch to any size but could never stretch far enough to close the distance between himself and the people he would eventually lose. These lessons are not trivial. They are not the kind of thing you outgrow. They are the kind of thing that settles into your bones and stays there, quiet and persistent, shaping the way you think about connection and loss in the passage of time without you ever quite realizing where the shapes came from. Adventure Time did not teach a generation how to be sad. It taught a generation that sadness is not something to be fixed or avoided or overcome. It is something to be felt, something to be carried, something to be shared if you are lucky, with someone who understands, someone who sits next to you and does not try to make it better, because some things cannot be made better, they can only be made bearable, and the bearing is easier when you are not alone. There is a line from the show that gets quoted often, usually without context, usually as an inspirational message on social media or a tattoo on someone's forearm. The line is simple. Sucking at something is the first step towards being sort of good at something. Jake says it to Finn early in the series, casually, the way Jake says most things. But the line carries more weight than it seems to, because it is not just about skill. It is about existence. It is about the willingness to be bad at something, to fail at something, to be broken and confused and lost, and to keep going anyway. To keep trying, to keep showing up to the practice of living even when the practice hurts. That is what every character in Adventure Time does. They show up. Simon shows up for Marceline even as the crown takes him. Marceline shows up for the Ice King even when he does not know who she is. Finn shows up for every fight, every quest, every relationship, even when the fight costs him his arm and the quest leads nowhere and the relationship ends in a quiet room with a girl who cannot look at him anymore. Bubblegum shows up for her kingdom even when the kingdom does not appreciate what she sacrifices. Jake shows up for Finn even in death. They show up, and the showing up is the story, not the victories, not the resolutions, not the moments where everything works out and the hero saves the day. The story is the showing up. The story is the choice, made daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes minute by minute, in the worst moments of the worst days. To keep being present in a world that offers no guarantees that presence will be rewarded. If you carry something heavy from this show, if there is a moment that stayed with you, if there is a scene you think about late at night when the house is quiet and the world feels too big, that is not a flaw in you. That is the show working exactly the way it was designed to work. Adventure Time was built to be felt, not just watched, felt. And the feeling it returns to more than any other, the one that runs through every season and every character and every strange, beautiful corner of its world, is the feeling of loving something you cannot keep. You cannot keep Simon. You cannot keep your father's love. You cannot keep your kingdom and your friends. You cannot keep your arm, your innocence, your old life, your mother, your sense of who you are. You cannot keep your best friend forever, not even in the afterlife, not even in the next life, not even if you fight through 50 dead worlds to reach him. But you can love them. You can love them while they are here, and you can love them after they are gone. And the love itself, the act of choosing to love in a world that takes everything away, is the only thing Adventure Time ever really asked of its characters. It is the only thing it ever really asked of you. And maybe that is enough. Maybe the sadness is not the price of love. Maybe the sadness is the proof that the love was real, that it mattered, that it was here for a while in a broken world full of broken people, and it was good. That 14-minute episode with the cookie on the cliff, Princess Cookie, Season 4, Episode 13, the one that started all of this. Do you remember what happens after he falls? The other characters do not leave him there. They do not move on. They gather the pieces. They put him in a hospital. And later, much later, in a quiet scene that most people do not remember, Finn visits Princess Cookie in the hospital and brings him a small crown, a tiara, the thing he wanted more than anything, the thing the world told him he could never have. Finn gives it to him, not because it solves anything, not because it fixes what happened, because sometimes the only thing you can do for someone who is broken is to show them that you see them, that their wanting was not ridiculous, that the thing they dreamed of mattered even if the world was not built to give it to them. That is Adventure Time. The whole show, in one small act of kindness in a hospital room, the crown does not fix Princess Cookie, but it tells him he was seen. And in a show about loss and sadness and the long, slow erosion of the things we love, being seen is the closest thing to being saved. Sleep well. If you are still here, if you stayed through all of it, thank you. If this is the kind of content you come back to, subscribing means more than you know. I will see you in the next one.